month when the students will come into the classes.
Okay, you're not having the blended mode. That means the ones who did not come, they will kind of, not be able to attend the classes. Is it in both modes, online, offline, or simply offline
Yeah.
only?
And no, it is starting. There was some online, offline, both the things were there. But nowadays we are doing
Uh-huh.
everything offline. Actually, we even had stopped the online classes also. So that otherwise the
Okay.
students they intensely not want to come to the institute otherwise.
हाँ वो तो है खैर they are so
That's
much happy with this online stuff and online examination
online.
especially.
Yes, sir,
uh,
yes, exactly.
तो उसमें ऑफलाइन में जो है ना उनको फिर दिक्कत रहती है। लेकिन अल्टीमेटली तो वी शुड ओपन अप लाइफ। कुछ ज़्यादा ही ऑनलाइन हो गया है, उसको ऑफलाइन
Yes.
करना ज़रूरी है।
So, is there any kind of activities now also? Sir, is there any kind of activities now also under TechUp, or it has been closed?
No, Dr. Ganesh, not much activity as such. It's nothing much as such because no funds available. Funds have been exhausted. So it's merely,
Yes.
I mean, at our end, we're kind of doing nothing under TechUp as such, except audit कराना and all that because हमारे तो funds exhaust हो गए थे। आपके यहाँ कुछ बचा होगा तो might be आप लोग कर सकते हैं।
The funds is there only for the for paying to the faculty who are there through NPIU. Although
नहीं
the faculty has
उसका अभी नहीं उसका नोटिफिकेशन हो गया क्या एनपीआई फैकल्टी का? अभी कुछ आपके यहाँ वो बनी
फाइनल
थी ना कोई
नोटिफिकेशन नहीं
कमेटी?
आया।
हाँ वो रहता
उसका
है ना
कमेटी
शायद
का अभी
अभी।
फाइनल नोटिफिकेशन नहीं है। Even central government has issued one order that state government may look after this one, and I think some of the part will be delivered by them, and some of the part I think state government has to bear. That kind of thing I am not sure about that, but almost all the activities related to TechUp third has been stopped right now.
ओके 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 चलो खैर कमेटी की रिपोर्ट आ जाए तो इट्स अ गुड थिंग इन केस यू कैन रिटेन दिस फैकल्टी क्योंकि ये बाय एंड लार्ज सभी अच्छे ही हैं और अच्छे इंस्टीट्यूशन से हैं। तो और वो आपके इंस्टीट्यूशन को दे आर हेल्पिंग अ लॉट ऑल इंस्टीट्यूशंस थ्रू टेकिप तो बहुत अच्छी
Yes,
सपोर्ट इनको मिली है। और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को भी इनफैक्ट दे शुड ट्राई
yes,
कंटिन्यू देम एटलीस्ट जब तक रेगुलर सिलेक्शंस नहीं हो जाते तो आप रखिए और रेगुलर में फिर जिसका भी रहता है दैट्स ओके।
yes, yes. And I think the faculty as who are coming from that NPIU, they are very good, very in
वेरी
the
गुड
sense
यस
academics as well as other activities also. So
एब्सोल्युटली
they should return
एब्सोल्युटली
here. I think government should make some arrangement for them.
naturally because they are all from very good institutions, their qualifications are from good institutions, they are good sincere faculty और इतना they have acquired this much experience तो मुझे लगता है they deserve to be retained and not only retained they deserve to be absorbed somehow in case ये regular selection procedure जितने को मौका मिलता है ना if they
Yes,
can accommodate तो कोशिश करना चाहिए you know
yes. So I think, sir,
तो
I should
जाकिर
start the
साहब
proceeding. Meanwhile, we'll start joining
yes
there. So,
हाँ yeah that's
okay.
okay I
So
think we
I
can begin
good
with
morning to all of. Yes, yes. So good morning all very much. So I would like to thanks to Professor Satan sir to join with us during this session. Although sir has very much in various academic research and institute, but so he has spared sir time for us. So I would like to introduce to sir that this activity is being organized by the ATAL, that is the Training and Learning Academy, under the financial support from that, and that is sponsored from the AICTE. This activity is for 5 days, and we have total 14 sessions from the various IITs, NITs, and some state government institutions. So one more thing that I would like to inform to all the participants also. I would like to introduce sir to participants. That sir has received his BTech, MTech, PhD degrees from NIT Kurukshetra, where he is currently professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering with overall teaching, research, and administrative experience of 25 years. Sir has guided and guiding quite a good number of PhDs around the area of hybrid energy systems, microgrid and its control, evolutionary algorithms and their applications in hybrid power system, etc. Sir has published more than 75 research articles in the international and national journals and conferences of repute. Also, Satan sir has served as Dean Students Welfare for 3 years and is currently serving as coordinator, TechCube Third at NIT Kurukshetra. At the national level, he has served for 3 years as the chairman of All India Board of Technical Education of AICTE in New Delhi, and also as the president's nominee for faculty selections at NITs across the country. Sir has traveled many places, including USA, Australia, France, UAE, Canada, and Japan for various academic interactions, and has delivered talks in reputed international conferences. So this much of wide experience of research and academics, I would like to invite Professor Satan sir to please present yourself. Professor Satan sir, please.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Ganesh, for giving a start to this day to my session and for your kind words. Being there associated with the Engineering College Bikaner, as you know, as coordinator of TQIP, because Engineering College Bikaner and NIT Kurukshetra, we are networked with each other through this project TechIP as mentor and mentee institutions. So that way we've been paying visits to each other, and the faculty, staff, and students, all stakeholders. We've been organizing a couple of events together in these years, So a lot of activities we conducted. So that way, the connect that I enjoy with Engineering College Bikaner is really, really very beautiful, and I always cherish that. And that's how I know whether I'm married or not. But these people, they keep inviting me off and on here and there for some reasons and all. So this talk. In the FDP, I'll be delivering around the energy storage systems. I hope my audio is clear, Dr. Ganesh, without breaks. It's coming to you.
Yes, your audio and video. Yes, sir. Your audio and video both are very clear. Thank you.
All right. So, the renewable energy systems or renewable energy push that we have in the recent decades, I should say, maybe 2 decades or so, that's really, really wonderful. And as we can all see by now, you might have had very wonderful sessions. And I'm sure all the learned experts that you have had interacted with, prior to me, would have dealt a great deal to this subject of renewable energy and how do you kind of take care of the various challenges and various issues that are related with the renewable energy systems. When you try and interconnect these systems into the existing grid, or else you try and use them in isolation, whichever way, these energy sources are very much there with us. And in fact, these are the sources that are the future. So, ideally speaking, the world should be, by let's say some 2-3 decades or so down the line, by let's say 2050, we expect it should be powered through renewables 100%. So every energy needs of ours, primarily in terms of electrical energy, because that's very easy to use and that's the convenient form of energy. So we try and generate electricity, we try and generate electrical power using renewable energy sources. And if we go by the priorities of the governments world over, if we go by the concerns for environment, if we go by the concerns for sustainability, we find that renewable energy, in fact, is going to play the key role in the future, and not only in terms of so to say clean power, clean energy, but also this sector is going to be providing the job scenario also, jobs to the youth much more than any other sector in the times to come. So from that point of view, this subject of renewable energy is very important. And what I believe is that each branch of engineering, especially, should at least have one subject in their BTech curriculum, on renewable energy systems, whether it's electrical, mechanical, civil, or any, because this renewable energy, when it comes to using and installation and commissioning of these projects, a whole lot of engineering is involved, and because that is where the job market is going to be very much, and research is also going to be around. So this is something whether we offer as an as an elective subject or a core subject, we should try and implement, those of us who are the faculty members, when we take up the the revision of our curriculum, we should try and incorporate at least one or two subjects around this subject. So it's that important, so to say, along with other evolving technologies, of course. So this is also an area, this is also a very focused area, where a lot of progress, a lot of research is going to take place, and a lot of commissioning of the projects is going to take place. So that's the importance of this area. So let's try and understand a few things around the energy storage systems and their need when we try and use the renewable energy sources. So I'll share the presentation and I'll take you through the presentation. Let me share the presentation with you. Can you see the slides? If somebody can confirm, Dr. Ganesh, if you can acknowledge.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, we can
visible.
see the slides.
It's really visible, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much. So the topic I have kept around energy storage systems, the overview and applications. So when it comes to energy storage systems, they do play a really very important role in the power system, wherein there's a huge penetration of renewable energy sources. And renewable energy sources, they do come with certain issues and challenges. Because of that, we need these energy storage systems all the more. Now, what are the renewable energy sources? By now, I think it's all very well established and understood by all of you. Right from the very first session, on the very first day, maybe the experts would have been taking you through around this area, some discussions around this area. So nothing much else to add on to that. But still, for the completeness of the talk, or to start the talk with, the energy that provides the highest environmental benefit, highest environmental profile, right? So, and includes power produced by. So, what are those sources that are, environmental friendly? So that includes solar, maybe wind, geothermal heat, biogas, low impact hydroelectric, and certain eligible biomass sources, tides, tidal power, ocean power, etc. So these are the sources that are renewable energy sources, because these are renewed by nature itself, right, at a pace which is much more than the pace at which we are going to use them. So if you talk of solar, for example, till the time there's sun available, there's life on the planet, so there is this solar system. So wind, obviously, wind also blows on too, so that's also something which is happening naturally. Geothermally, that's under the earth's surface that we can try and use it, but then that's very geographical specific, may not be available everywhere. Biogas, that's there anyway, available in abundance. Can you try and use that? So all these kind of sources that are renewable, that are renewed by nature and do not cause any adverse impact on the environment, so those are the renewable energy sources. And these are renewable and readily available almost all over the globe, including in any remote or rural areas. Okay, and the basic idea is, the aim is to improve the overall environmental profile of energy, right? The energy needs that we meet out today, let's say if we talk of coal-based or oil-based or gas-based, these sources, they pollute the environment. As we burn the coal, for example, a lot of carbon dioxide is released, or some other gases as well, that are greenhouse gases that all of us are aware of. And because of that very reason, people have now started getting concerned all the more because of the degradation of the climate or the environment. Why important? Why these sources are important? 2-3 important reasons. One important reason is depleting fossil fuels, as all of us can understand. These fossil fuels, whether we talk of coal, we talk of oil, we talk of natural gas, they do have a life, right? They are not available until eternity, right? So maybe the pace at which we're using these fossil fuels, If you continue with the same pace, might be coal is going to last not more than maybe 100, 150 years more. Oil maybe a little lesser than that. So these fuels, they do have a life. What if, one day we don't have these fuels, then how we're going to, meet our energy demands and energy needs? So that's one important reason people started thinking of renewables and started using renewables for our energy needs. Then concern for environment, which I believe is rather more important reason than the first one even. Right. So concern for environment. We have, the climate change taking place because of the greenhouse gases. The average Earth surface temperature is rising, and world over, the humanity is concerned about this changing climate. And there are these conferences taking place under the United Nations. Recently, there was this COP26 in UK, Glasgow. So all these conferences, all these concern, these climate summits are taking place world over. All countries, they're trying and joining hands, and they are, cooperating in meeting this challenge of climate change. So the concern for environment is rather more important reason than even the depletion of these fossil fuels. Right. So maybe there's a time when we will still have sufficient reserves of these fossil fuels. We'll stop using them. Right. So that's the importance of renewable energy onto protecting the environment and meeting our energy needs through. Concern for sustainability. Right. These the energy that we are using, or the energy that comes to us for our use, through certain sources. So are those sources sustainable? Right. Even if they're not doing any damage to the environment, but if there's a source that is going to maybe end up in certain span of time, so that's not sustainable. So sustainability. And if you talk of solar, if you talk of for instance wind, so if life is possible only if on this planet, only if we do have this solar system, only we have the sun, right? Sun energy available to us, right? Or maybe the wind energy available to us. So these sources are sustainable, and that's why we are working towards. And as on date, if you see, I think by now it's almost 1/3 of the energy needs, especially in the power sector, is coming through renewables. Right. And 3 decades down the line, possibly it will be almost 80-90% energy or the power to be generated through renewables. So that's very, very important. But then all right, the central message is sustainability. Okay. And anything sustainable, well, not only energy, but even in our life also. If you talk of mechanical engineering, for instance, people are talking about life cycle assessment, right from the cradle to the grave. The product it takes, the raw material that you extract from the mines, and until it goes onto the gets disposed of eventually, the product after its use. So every process, every stage, that product should not do any damage, or the process should not do any damage to the environment. So in every aspect of a life, sustainability is important. And that's, as we all understand, is something like meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So can we, as human beings, think of bringing in this sustainability aspect in our lifestyle as well? Not necessarily in terms of energy, but also in our lifestyle. For example, if we are born on this planet, how did we find this planet? Can we somehow see that when we leave this planet is little better than the time when we came on this planet? So if every one of us think in terms of those, and if every one of us start living need-based, even if it comes to consuming energy, let's say in terms of electricity, or in consuming some other resources, can we live need-based? And that's a sustainable way of life, right? In terms of uses of the resources. All right, we shouldn't misuse the resources. Until now, we've been doing, I think we've been doing violence against nature, and that's why we're thinking of sustainability now. That's why we're concerned all of a sudden about the environment and all. Had we been caring for nature, possibly this days won't have occurred. But yes, nevertheless, sooner than later, let's try and contribute our bit in terms of in terms of creating less wastage, less waste, in terms of using the resources absolutely genuinely need-based only, and especially the energy. So this renewable energy, anyway, I'm kind of going a little philosophical, but yes, sustainability is the central message. Concern for nature and environment is another important message, and renewable energy sources are going to play a very, very important role in bringing in sustainability in aspect of energy. Now, when it comes to the renewable energy sources, okay, there is this graphical structure that conveys, renewable energy sources could be, are wind. Wind could be through wind, could be through solar, hydro, bioenergy, geothermal, marine. And when it comes to wind, it could be onshore or offshore installations that all of you are possibly aware by now, even otherwise would have been. When it comes to solar, it could be solar PV, it could be solar heating, or it could be concentrating solar power through reflectors around and all. So and hydro, obviously, as we all understand, using the water resources, and bioenergy for electricity and heat, right? That you can use biofuels. Geothermal heat that's beneath the Earth's surface, marine, it could be tidal power, it could be ocean waves that you can try and use for your energy needs. And when we talk of our own country, India is a blessed country that way, blessed by nature in terms of renewable energy, or otherwise also we have kind of all kind of geographies available, right from the very peaky mountains wherein there's all the time snow there, and down to the plains, to the coastline. So all sorts of geographies we do have, diversity of geography we do have. We do have say something on 300 clear sunny days all over the year. If you see, we have maybe more than a dozen perennial rivers that flow all through the year. We do have, say, a coastline which is as long as maybe some 7,500 kilometers, more than that maybe. So in terms of renewable energy especially, our country is really very blessed by nature. If we can exploit and we can try and use that potential, we can be a self-sufficient country in energy, and rather, we can help our neighboring countries as well. The day is not far when these energy exchanges would take place between the countries, and there could be maybe, like in our country we do have now one nation, one grid. We did have some 5 different regions. Now they became 4, they became 3, 2, and now we have one grid only. The entire power network is connected throughout the country. So we could have this grid extensions taking place between the neighboring countries and eventually across the continents. Right. So the country that has a potential of renewable energy, and if that country can generate power which is more than the requirement of its own people, then maybe they can export that energy as well. So our nation has got a good potential around wind energy and solar energy, especially geothermal. Possibly we don't have much, but yes, wind and solar for sure, it's really very good. Okay. Renewable energy resources based electricity generation of the top 4 countries. And the data is a little older, but it's okay, as of 2018 end. So if you see, China is at number 1 in terms of renewable energy. So if you talk of wind energy, that's like, this is in terms of gigawatt wind energy, then solar PV, then hydro, then biopower, and ocean plus geothermal and concentrated solar power. So all put together. So then USA, then Germany and India, we're also kind of catching up pretty fast. And you might be knowing that the government of India is also laying really, really very good focus on to renewable energy. And there's a separate Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. And we have set a target of 175 gigawatt, by 2022. And we are possibly likely to achieve even earlier than the close of 2022. So we are, having the accelerated growth, not only in India, but all over the globe. And I think we'll become the energy excess country someday if we try and exploit all these resources. And A lot of big solar power plants are coming up, wind farms are coming up in our country, and eventually we're phasing out with the coal-based thermal power stations, and we will be having, by and large, the renewable energy as the core energy available. Growth of renewable energy-based electricity generation worldwide, if you see, if you look at the graph, see 1994 to 2004, right? I mean, just a decade. It was almost negligible, nothing much. And then after 2005 to 2010, this was the growth that took place. And 16 to 16 and 17 to 22. I mean, look at this. If we go for the additional accelerated case capacity growth, there is this International Energy Agency. Accelerated, that means in case we try and maybe pedal a little bit more push on to these resources, then we can go even up to this point. So the steep rise, exponential rise in a way, I should say, until maybe until 2000 or so, 2004 or 5, it was almost nothing, and suddenly it's picking up. And if you see the statistics, every year I think it's something around 250 or 260 gigawatt of power. Additional capacities are being added onto the grid, primarily coming from solar and wind, of course, but then something around 250 to 260 gigawatt additional capacity additions per year. Globally, I'm talking about not only in our country, but globally. So that's really, really huge. And it's expected that by 2024 or so, this renewable energy will surpass the coal and gas put together. The energy, that's coming from coal and gas. So that's the pace at which people are working around, and the renewable energy is being generated through. And renewable energy resources are being used as primarily as distributed generation power sources, and that are on the distribution side, generally termed as DC power systems. And if you see, there are these different kind of loads that are being catered to by these sources. DC power systems can be as defined, as you all might be knowing, as the generation of electricity by the electricity generation sources, mainly renewable energy, which are sufficiently small, right? Maybe ranging from a few kilowatts to tens of megawatt, as compared to the central power system stations, for example, thermal power station of 1000 megawatt, maybe 2000 megawatt, and all in all. These distributed generation power systems, they are of low capacities, and they are distributed in in the geographies, and primarily around the load centers. Wherever there is the load demand, if you have a potential of particular renewable energy source, fine, try and use it and install a small power plant there. So this concept of microgrids that has come up, and that is self-sufficient and also can be grid connected. So whichever way, DC distributed generation is really very much picking up. Then comes, having established the need for renewable energy, obviously renewable energy is important. What all sources that are there in renewable energy that we have understood. Then why the need for energy storage systems? The text is a little too much. I usually don't keep this much text in my slides, but fine. For you, maybe you can scan through, go through it. The use of renewable energy, the use of energy storage systems is important when we are increasing the penetration of renewable energy into the power system, because this energy, if we talk of primarily of the solar and wind, the very nature of these sources is intermittent, and these are unpredictable. For example, in case you have a solar power plant installed, and suddenly it becomes cloudy, right? So you're getting maybe some maybe 10 megawatt of power, and suddenly that gets reduced to 8 megawatt, maybe goes down even 5, and it's pretty cloudy, maybe dark clouds, maybe it goes down even 1 or 2 megawatt. Likewise, wind. When the wind blows, it's fine, and suddenly the wind stops, or the wind velocity varies, and it comes down to a certain level, maybe, which is threshold value, and a cut-in speed, so to say, and there is no generation taking place. So these sources are weather dependent, right? Depending on the weather, the output of these sources, the generated power output is going to vary. Now, to take care of those variations, you need to have certain backup system in case you're feeding to a certain area and that power plant, solar or a wind, is operating in isolation or in islanded mode. It is not grid connected. So to take care of the load requirements of that particular area, you need to have certain energy storage system in place, so that in the eventuality of you getting less power from renewable energy sources, you can feed it through these energy storage systems. That whatever is the deficient power, you can feed it through energy storage systems. Also, in the event of certain disturbance taking place, these energy storage systems are helpful in restoring the balance of demand and supply. And as a result, the system reliability, or the quality of reliability, you can say, that gets improved. The disturbance, for example, could be caused by any malfunctioning of any of the micro source. For example, in a distributed generation, you could be having all maybe wind, maybe solar, maybe biomass as well, or some other sources. So it can be because of whatever reason. So this energy storage systems comes to rescue there primarily, and plays an important role to restore the balance. Sorry. And all the load shedding could be an option to overcome this problem, but then frequent load sheddings is going to cause really a great problem. There could be some critical loads also that cannot be shut. For example, if it's a medical installation and there's a health center, right? So for things like that, you cannot afford to shut down. So energy storage systems, that way in those kind of applications become really very important, really very critical, and you'll have to have these in place. Some of the issues where energy storage systems have played important roles are what are the potential application areas, so to say, of the energy storage systems. That includes, the facilitation of large renewable energy sources into the grid, increasing operating reserve frequency regulation, enhancement of power transmission capacity of transmission lines, reducing the voltage fluctuations, enhancing low voltage ride-through capability. Those of you from electrical engineering, you know it all. Improving the power quality and reliability. So these are some of the potential applications wherein energy storage systems they are being used. Okay, a suitable and reliable energy storage system can help in exploiting stochastic nature of renewable energy resources. Right, stochastic, unpredictable. You never know how the weather is going to behave, and accordingly the output is going to vary. So to make it little more reliable, you can try and pick up a particular class of renewable. We'll be discussing in detail what all are the energy storage systems and which one is suitable for a particular application. So energy storage system in that sense can be used in the renewable energy sources, whether it's in isolation or grid connected. If it's grid connected, fine, the grid also takes care of it, but then ESS comes handy to be used. High capital cost and lack of experience are the reasons which restrict the commercialization of energy storage systems. But still, despite that, the technology, the cost is also coming down, and I think it's now getting fairly, some of the technologies especially are getting fairly matured, and they are being deployed also in large scale as the energy storage systems we'll discuss. But still, there's a lot of research going around energy storage systems, whether it's the smallest possible storage system which is there in use since long, that's a battery, up until the latest maybe fuel cells and other systems. So when it comes to the classification of energy storage systems, they could be classified in the following categories: mechanical energy storage systems, chemical energy storage. When we talk of mechanical energy storage, we do have pumped hydro energy storage, compressed air energy storage, and flywheel energy storage. And chemical energy, we do have fuel cell and electrolyzer. And electrochemical energy storage, we do have these battery energy storage systems. That includes different kinds of these batteries. We do have flow battery energy storage system, redox flow and hybrid flow. These two different kind of, again, battery only, but little difference in the principle of working. electrostatic and electromagnetic energy storage, that includes your ultra capacitor or supercapacitor, you call it as. That includes your SMES, superconducting magnetic energy storage. And thermal energy storage, we do have, thermal energy storage could be like sensible heat. You can try and store latent, thermochemical, pumped. So all these energy storage systems, they do have different salient features. They do have their merits and demerits and suitability also. It's not that one kind of energy storage is a panacea, Rambanu Shadi, so to say, for all kind of applications. Not necessarily. They do have certain characteristics that could be suitable for certain applications. All right, but primarily these are the ones that are there in use, world over, and especially in renewable energy sectors. Share of present global installed energy storage systems capacity. If you talk of, we do have almost 96% energy storage system that comes through pumped hydro energy storage system. Will discuss the detail of it as well, and the rest 4% is in terms of say your thermal energy storage or compressed air energy storage, right? Maybe flywheel energy storage system, battery and hybrid energy storage, SMES and super capacitor, etc. So 96% almost is your pumped hydro energy storage. And that's what it is. Again, this is a little cramped text, but fine. You just try and understand what it is. It is simple. Principle is that, what are we doing is we're trying and using the energy when it's available in excess. Whether it's, let's say this is the electrical energy we are coming to us from renewables, control and power conditioning system. So when we do have excess energy, electricity, then we are trying and pumping the water from the low reservoir to the upper reservoir, and this low reservoir could be at the surface level or maybe underground as well, and we're taking this water from here using the pump to this upper reservoir. And whenever there is this deficit of energy or power, the generation is less than the consumption, the demand is more and generation is less. So what are we going to do is we're going to use this potential energy of the water stored here through the turbine, and coupled with that there's a generator. So the energy is generated through the generator and supplied to the grid or to the area, right? So this is the very simple concept of it. Charging and discharging cycle. Charging means we are lifting the water from the lower reservoir to the upper reservoir using the electrical energy which is available in excess, or maybe off peak period when the load is not much, excess energy available. Try and uplift the water and store it somewhere at a height, and try that water, to use that water which is stored at height through turbine and coupled generator to generate electricity when there is a peak demand or when there is less generation out here. So that's the idea behind pumped hydro energy storage systems. And top 5 countries and their pumped hydro energy storage installed capacity, if you look at in gigawatt, then China is having, in terms of absolute value, this energy storage capacity of 32.1 gigawatt, 32,000 megawatts, so to say. That's the capacity of PHES there in China, and which is 1.9% of its total installed capacity. Japan is 28.5 gigawatt, which is 8.7% of the installed capacity of that country. USA 24.2 gigawatt, 1.8% of the total. Spain 8 gigawatt, 7.37%, and Italy is 7.1, 5.9% of it. So these are the top 5 countries in terms of PHES installed capacities. Then compressed air energy storage system. Again, the ambient air is through these compressors, it's compressed, and obviously when it gets compressed, there's heat generated, and that compressed air gets stored in a storage tank. And when obviously there's power excess, then only try and do this storage, and then after, when there's power deficit, right, generation is less than the consumption, then this very excuse me, then this stored air, which is at a pressure, compressed air, through some preheating, goes to these turbines through that, and there's a coupled generator system. Okay. So this generates electricity. This motor generator coupling set between these two turbines, it acts as a motor when there is this power excess. So try and use that power to compress the air and store it, and then after preheat it a bit, and then try and use it at a little higher pressure and temperature to generate this, run this machine as a generator. The power is generated and used there in the system. So that's the idea behind. It's just some sort of similar to your pumped hydro, in the sense that you are trying using the energy, using the power, excess power in compressing the air, and then that compressed air is going to turn into that energy is turning into kinetic energy, and that runs this turbine and coupled generator and generates electricity. And these are the established and proposed CAs in the world. If you see, there's a place in Germany, Henthof, wherein we do have a capacity of CAS is 290 megawatt. That was established in 1978. Then this Alabama, USA, 110 megawatt capacity of CAS in 1991. 90 megawatt again in Germany in 2010. And this is proposed 2700 megawatt, right? 2.7 gigawatt that is proposed in Ohio. Then again Texas, 540 megawatt, Utah 1200 megawatt, and UK 268 megawatt. Right. So this is the potential, that is there available in CAS. Then flywheel energy storage, again mechanical kind of energy storage systems, wherein there's a flywheel enclosed in a chamber, which is kind of there's vacuum there in that, so that there's no friction encountered by this, and this flywheel rotating mass. Whenever we have the excess energy, and there is this electrical machine which is going to act as a motor or a generator, depending on if there is excess power available through these resources, that power is used to run this this mass at a pretty high speed. And since there is vacuum and these lower magnetic bearing and upper magnetic bearing, and they do have a little less friction. So this rotating mass, in fact, gathers energy in terms of kinetic inertia. And whenever there is a deficit, and since there's a vacuum inside, so without friction, if at all there's something running, it will keep running, although there might be some leakage somewhere somehow. But then this flywheel energy in terms of kinetic energy that it stores could be used in case of need. If there's some shortage, so this kinetic energy gets used in generating power through generator, and this deficit power, if at all any, can be taken care of. Right. So the same machine can be as generator and motor. So this is the concept of flywheel energy storage, mechanical kind of an arrangement. Fuel cell energy storage, it's a chemical energy that is there in terms of certain chemical bonds of the compounds. And when there's a chemical reaction takes place, and primarily there are different kinds of fuel cells. So but if you see the one which is general for the sake of understanding, this is nowadays like one of the prominent energy sources, storage systems. It involves two steps basically. One step is producing hydrogen when there is excess power available, and then producing electricity from the stored hydrogen using fuel cell in case power is in shortage. All right. And so electric power injected. So this is pure water injected into water electrolyzer. It will produce hydrogen that gets stored in a hydrogen tank. And there's a fuel cell, anode, cathode, and electrolyte there and there. And there is this fresh air taken from a hydrogen from here. And as the chemistry of it says, you'll get the electrical power generated, and that can be supplied to. Okay. And when there is excess power available, try and generate hydrogen from this pure water injected into this. So that's the concept. Battery energy storage system, as all of us know, there are all different kinds of batteries, right? And so here the electricity anyway, that's the DC power available through the batteries, you get converted into electrical, the AC power supply through converters and all that all of you might be aware of. And this is where also this is very important. So that since this is the very first, I should say, anyway, energy storage system that was there available, and nowadays all different kinds of batteries are available, primary, secondary, and flow batteries, and all. Okay. Yes, flow energy, battery energy storage system. They are a little different from the conventional battery energy storage systems, in the sense that the energy in flow batteries is stored into soluble liquid electrolytes. That is one. Otherwise, in a battery that's already fixed, already there, filled into negative electrolyte storage. There is this anode, through this pump, that flows through, and through the positive electrolyte storage here into the cathode. And there is this porous electrodes and the ion separation membrane. So this is also a battery, but it's a flow battery because this electrolyte is stored in the form of a liquid and flows through. This is a bit of a comparison I think you can appreciate if you see the characteristics of different batteries. Main characteristics, and say if we see the energy density and power density, that's energy density in watt hour per kg and power density in watt per kg. So this is going to decide the dimension and weight of the battery actually. How much energy density you want there in a battery, or how much power density you want there in a battery. And then lifetime, I mean, how many cycles of charging, discharging, and that battery is going to withstand. Then efficiency, how efficient that battery is, and what is the cost of that battery, let's say in US dollars per kilowatt hour. And then battery energy storage system capacity, the biggest existing installations. Where are these biggest existing installations? What is the capacity? What is the location? And what are the applications it is used for? So if we see the simplest possible, very conventional, traditional lead acid battery, so the energy density is to the tune of 50 to 75, and power density is 150 to 300, and it runs for, say, something around between 1000 and 2000 cycles of charging and discharging, and efficiency is something around 75 to 80%. Cost is $300 to $1,200 per kilowatt hour, depending on the size. And this battery of 10 megawatt or 40 megawatt hours, so to say, capacity is installed in California, USA, in the power system for these applications: black start, stationary transmission, distribution, upgrade, deferral. We'll discuss these applications in the upcoming slides. This is wall regulated lead acid battery, a little different in construction. The gas there inside is trapped and released depending on. These are the energy densities, range of energy density, power density, life cycle in terms of charging, discharging cycles, efficiency, cost, and the installations. Okay, not much use though. This is a nickel cadmium battery. Likewise, we do have these kind of statistics that you can appreciate if you can scan through yourself. Sodium sulfur battery, then lithium ion battery, which is, I think all of you might be aware of, pretty much used there. The major share of the batteries is captured by lithium ion batteries only. So its energy density is in the range of 100 to 200, and the power density is 1000 to 2000. Life cycle is these many cycles of charging, discharging, 1000 and 1500, in this range. 85 efficiency is pretty good, 85 to 95%, and cost is also it's on the higher side. And there is this capacity of 100 megawatt. Look at this capacity, 100 megawatt of energy storage system. 100 megawatt is little too much, and that's there in South Australia, and that is meant utilized for peak saving and renewable energy resources integration of it. And this very capacity, this battery of I think there was this shutdown that took place, some blackout somewhere for some reason in Australia. There was some disturbance, and this battery alone, I think in a fraction of seconds, it took care of that power supply, restoring the power supply back to, or maybe not letting it close down. So 100 megawatt it's a very good capacity. These are the flow batteries: vanadium redox flow battery, zinc bromine, and PSB. So these are the ranges of their energy densities and power densities, and these are the life cycle and all that. This installation is yet to take place for one battery PSB, and these are some of the initial installations of these kind of batteries somewhere in USA, Japan, and for these kind of applications. The details of this a bit, they're there further, but even batteries, they are classified in different categories. We do have a variety of batteries for variety of applications in a variety of ranges also, capacities, so to say. Supercapacitor is another energy storage system which is being used, and it has got its own advantage in terms of the response time, etc. Like batteries, it has also got some two electrodes separated by a separator and store energy in electrostatic fields. This is different from conventional capacitor in the form that electrostatic field they can store in high amount of energy per unit volume, to the tune of 10 to 100 times more than a conventional capacitor. So supercapacitor is having that capacity and a very, very fast response. That's the advantage of it. If you compare battery and supercapacitor response time is almost 10 times faster than batteries. So wherever there's a need of, let's say, to meet out the deficit, maybe in almost no time, maybe transient period of it, then you try and use supercapacitors. Okay. Then superconducting magnetic energy storage system is also an important class of energy storage system, which is having the energy stored in terms of the magnetic field in a coil, and that coil is superconducting only if it's at certain temperature, which is, let's say, minus 270 degree, right? So very LT and HT superconducting magnets, so low temperature and high temperature. So it's a low temperature superconducting magnet. It becomes, there's this coil, superconducting coil, through which there's a DC current pass through, and there's a magnetic field. Obviously, if there's a current, there's a field. So that magnetic field is stored there in this magnet, and which is enclosed in a closed chamber, which is meant at a temperature maintained minus 270 degrees Celsius. So this energy can be supplied back to the system in case of shortage, or this coil can be charged, or this magnetic superconducting magnet can be charged through this excess supply, if at all any. And there is this energy needed here also in the refrigeration system. Maybe if in the times to come there is a superconducting coil which is superconducting at the room temperature, it's wonderful. That be, I think that's going to be altogether revolutionary innovation, if at all that happens. So that there's no loss in the transmission lines and all, because if it's at room temperature, it's ambient temperature. If it's superconducting, so that's wonderful. No copper loss, etc. But yes, superconducting magnetic energy storage as of now is under the controlled environment of very, very low temperature, which we call it as the cryogenically cooled, or cryogenic temperature, let's say minus 270 degree, to the tune of it. Then this is thermal energy storage that also utilizes the heat energy to store electricity by converting heat energy into electrical energy. Thermal energy otherwise also could be stored maybe in certain phase change materials. For example, if we talk of salt, molten salt, that changes its phase from solid to liquid to gas, etc. So if the energy is, if you heat it up, so maybe there is certain organic and inorganic oils also of different varieties that can store energy, thermal energy. And so there are these concentrated solar thermal power stations wherein there are reflectors also installed around in the field, and they focus only on one central tower somewhere, and that tower gets heated up to the tune of maybe 500 and 600 degrees Celsius. And if that much is the heat, that much is the temperature, that can be used to generate steam, and that can run a power plant like that also. And this is also one way of it, wherein and this is a kind of set where this motor or generator, it can act as a motor as well as a generator. There's this low temperature vessel and high temperature vessel. So this, usually it's the argon gas that is used here at the ambient temperature and pressure, goes through the compressor, gets compressed, temperature obviously rises, and that when it passes through this tank, it heats up the particulate matter there inside these tanks. and eventually obviously it gets cooler, the argon gets cooler, but and passes through, and through the turbine. When it goes, its pressure also gets, becomes less, and it goes up. In the process it loses its temperature. The particulate matter becomes heated up, air gets cooled, and the argon gets cooled, and this is a cycle. But when it's the other way around, when the excess power is not available, when it's the power shortage is there, then you try use this very energy to generate electricity, right? So the cycle, instead of anti-clockwise, clockwise, it becomes anti-clockwise, and this heat exchanger can extract some heat also, for certain other purposes. But then it goes up, and mechanical, those of you who are from mechanical engineering maybe can appreciate much better than me this kind of energy storage system. So this coupling system is motor generator both, depending on power excess or shortage, and this energy can also be utilized for your meeting out these making the balance between power and supply. Then if you compare power rating with discharge time, duration of different energy storage systems, power rating with discharge time. For example, we do have the discharge time onto this axis, y-axis, and here we have the power ratings. So which kind of energy storage discharge time is, like how much duration it will take to discharge, so to say, right? So if you see SMES, superconducting magnetic energy storage, or supercapacitors, their capacities are, let's say, up to 1 megawatt or maybe less than that, but their discharge time is pretty small. That means the response time is pretty small. They respond in almost no time, in seconds, right? Flywheel energy storage, that goes into, let's say, up to minutes. Then battery energy storage and thermal energy and your compressed air, etc., their discharge time could be from minutes to hours, and even days and weeks also, right? And capacity wise, say pumped hydro energy storage is good, highest capacity. It can be in the range of, say, 1000 megawatt as well, right? 1000 megawatt capacity, but its discharge time or duration could be in 2 weeks. It may last for that long, or even hydrogen storage for that matter. But these are the energy storage systems that are going to be lasting only in seconds. Okay, so depending on your requirement and depending on the capacity that you require, and what is the discharge time that you need to have at least, or to take care of the system deficit and deficiency of power, up to what time you need to take care of. So which energy source is to be needed, that you can decide on. In case, let's say, you need to supply some energy or inject some power into the system for at least 1 hour, you can't be using supercapacitor for that matter. You can't be using SMEs, like that. You'll have to pick up. If we compare the power density versus energy density of different energy storage systems, and actually these two matrices, they are going to decide the size and weight of the system, right? How bulky, how heavy your energy storage system is going to be, and that all depends on the energy density requirement and power density requirement. And if you see this graph, energy density and power density on this axis, then you find for the given amount of energy, higher the power and energy densities, lesser will be the volume of the energy storage system. Right, power density is generally expressed, that's okay, that's we already discussed. So see, PHES, if you see, its energy density is not that much, but and CAS as well, and all battery energy, different kinds of batteries, thermal, and if you see this hydrogen storage, the energy density is little, that's really very good, and its power density is also really good. And supercapacitor, the power density is really wonderful, although its energy density is kind of going to tell you the duration for how long it will last, so that's what it is. And power density, and how much power it can inject at any point in time. So the power density, for example, of supercapacitor is really very good. So it can, in almost no time also we have seen discharge time, can inject huge push of power into the system, even SMEs. So if you need a very kind of burst of power injection in a short time, you can go in for supercapacitor or SMEs, etc. In case you need the energy storage system to last longer, and provide maybe some power density of certain range. For example, here hydrogen it's okay, fairly fine. Batteries, they are like in all different ranges, right from the power density which is as low as like almost negligible until very high. So batteries, they are playing good role, right? Then if we compare the life expectancy, number of charge discharge cycles versus the efficiency of different energy storage systems. Fuel cell, for instance, it's little less efficient than thermal, than compressed air, PHEs, and all batteries. They do have the efficiency in this range. And supercapacitor, SMES, and flywheel energy storage, their lifetime is really good. Number of cycles it can last for, and their lifetime cycle of fuel cell, etc., is relatively lesser. Okay, so you'll have to, if you go by the economics of it, which energy storage system you're going to use, for certain applications. So this all comes into picture, that eventually your payback period should be, let's say, this much time, and the energy needs or power density, or maybe energy density needs, and the duration in which you want it to respond, response time, so to say. So many factors, they go into deciding which kind of energy storage system you're going to use. Capital cost, yeah, okay, that's there. Capital cost is also one of the important factors that govern your decision to use a particular kind of energy storage system. For example, if you talk of thermal energy or CAS, compressed air, PHEs, etc., power cost is that's going higher for PHEs because of the installation cost of PHEs facility. You just can't be, installing PHEs anywhere and everywhere. You need to have certain storage tank facilities, etc. Right. Likewise, compressed air energy storage also, there has to be certain maybe underground facility to store the compressed air. Maybe there are these salt caverns being used for these kind of applications, or maybe certain mines that are abundant and maybe empty that can be used for. So all these batteries, their fuel cell, FES, SMEs, etc., capital cost is is a very important deciding factor. Then these are the applications of these energy storage systems. In terms of electrical engineering, if you think of, we do have application, so to say, in terms of power quality issues. To address the power quality issues, the ES is being used for power quality issues, for bridging power applications, for energy management. And power chain could be on the grid side applications, could be generation side applications, end user or load side applications, and renewable energy resources integration. So where are we going to use these energy storage systems? Whether are we going to use them on the grid side, or on the generation side, or the load side, and whether it's being primarily to take care of those issues that arise out of the RER integration into the system. And in any of these power chain applications, we're going to use them. There further can be bifurcated into these three: power quality, that means to take care of voltage regulation, and reactive power support, to provide reactive power support so as to regulate the voltage, or to provide active power support to regulate the frequency. That's the generation side application. Power quality, there are some harmonics, etc. LVRT, low voltage ride through capability, fluctuation separation, oscillation damping. These are the power quality, applications, so to say, onto all of these areas. Then bridging power applications, transmission support, transmission congestion relief, if at all the transmission lines, they get congested, the capacity is low and the transmission is little more, required to be done little more. Black start, contingency reserve, uninterrupted power supply, electric service reliability, forecast hedge mitigation. We'll be touching upon these a bit in detail also in the subsequent slides quickly. Then mitigating RER integration issues. Energy management, when it comes to, then it could be T&D investment, deferral, transmission distribution. Energy time shifting, arbitrage, peak saving or valley filling, load following demand charge management, RER capacity firming. So these are some of the applications that wherein you could be using these energy storage systems. Applications of ESS according to the duration of discharge and storage capacity. Now, if you see these very things, energy management, bridging, power application, power quality applications. These are the capacities, and these are the areas wherein these can be used, and discharge duration also of these energy storage systems, right? For power quality, you could be using these in case you want the discharge. I mean, what is the requirement for power quality applications? That the discharge time should be really less. That should be in seconds at the most, or maybe not beyond minutes anyway. And for bridging power applications, the discharge time could be from minutes to hours. And for energy management, it could be into days and weeks as well, right? So these applications categorize in terms of the discharge time requirements. And which of the energy storage systems they do have discharge time in seconds, those are the ones that can be used for power quality. And the energy storage systems that do have the discharge time, let's say running into minutes and maybe up to hours, could be used for bridging power applications. And for energy management, what all energy storage systems can be used? The ones that are having their discharge time running into days and weeks. Okay. Again, a little cramped text, and anyway, you can pardon me for that, but it just maybe in case I say the PPTs, you can appreciate. Otherwise, I could have put simply the bullet points, and I thought it's okay. Power quality applications require what? A very prompt response from the energy storage system, as the delay may cause the collapse of the whole power system. Therefore, this short time duration is required. That's maybe into seconds or minutes at the most. And these are high power and low energy applications. High power and low energy applications, right? A burst of power, so to say, to be injected. Low energy may not be lasting for longer duration, but then you need instant response, a very high boost of power. Voltage regulation is one such application, right? That is obviously you need the reactive power support to come through the energy storage systems. And these are some of the energy storage systems that are having pretty fast response time. For example, your SMEs, FES, and flow batteries, supercapacitors even. Reactive power support, the reasons behind, you're using these in DC power system, especially in wind, squirrel cage induction mode generators, and they do consume a lot of reactive power, and as a result, the requirement. And there are some other kinds of loads also, wherein reactive power support is very, very important. Okay. Then frequency regulation is something to do with the active power support. You need, in case there's a frequency, you might have heard of low frequency control. With the variation of load, there is this reflection of the load onto the frequency. Right? In India, we do have 50 hertz frequency as the norm. So all the generators that are there connected onto the grid, they need to synchronize around 50 hertz only, at 50 hertz only. And if and that balance is, if let's say X amount of power is generated and X amount of power is being consumed, there's perfect balance. But by any chance, if the power consumed, for example, is less and power generated is more, so the frequency is going to rise. The machines, they'll start running at a faster speed, right? Or generators. And if the power is in deficit and load is more, and the frequency will go down. It will try and reflect onto the speed of the generators. So we need to have perfect balance of active power to regulate the frequency at 50 hertz. And if and all the time this balance is being maintained by certain controllers in the system. So energy storage systems can play an important role there also. If there's a shortfall of some amount of power, and there is an energy storage system, then can take care of that temporarily for a certain time. Meanwhile, there'll be some facility that will be generating more power, and especially because of renewable energy, because renewable energy are really very unpredictable. At some point in time, it is clear sun, you're getting maybe some 10 kilowatt power or 10 megawatt power, for instance, from a solar thermal power park, and suddenly it becomes cloudy. So instead of 10 megawatt, you start getting maybe 9.5 or 9. So where from the rest is going to come? So especially when we are thinking of penetrating a lot of renewable energy sources into the system, and eventually primarily powered by renewables only. So we need these energy storage systems all the more. So for frequency regulation, to provide active power support, we need to use energy storage systems. Other power quality issues, the interaction between RERs and load can also lead to increased harmonics, low power factor, and phase imbalance also. So these power quality issues can be addressed by the power converters, obviously through power converters via the ESS. And in power quality application, efficiency and cycle life is not as much important as the availability of full power at a fast pace, at a fast time, fast rate. Power quality applications, especially in almost no time, the response times will be pretty fast. Okay. On an average, power quality applications are expected to mitigate 100 events per year, not many events. So technical characteristics of these kind of batteries are well suited for power quality applications: lithium ion, sodium sulfur, and lead acid batteries, and some supercapacitor SMAs also, and they can provide power quality services due to their fast response time as well, and high depth of discharge, and to what extent you can discharge them up to. Low voltage ride through applications, that's the ability to make the generating system stay in connection with the grid in the event of a fault, right? Or large load change or steep downfall occurring in the output power of the generating system. So in case that happens, your system should still be able to, your generating system should still be able to stay connected in the grid without causing a collapse. So there also in those kind of application, good amount of support can come through the renewable energy sources. Okay, in such conditions, they can be integrated at the location of connection with the grid and reducing the risk of total power system collapse. For fluctuation suppression, in DC, because of the unpredictability of renewable energy sources, because of weather conditions, and especially if you have the operation in islanding mode, then it's all the more important the need for energy storage systems. But these fluctuations in the power output primarily is taken care of by energy storage systems, and the output power of wind or solar or some other renewable energy source keeps on fluctuating. So can there be energy storage system that can mitigate these fluctuations? And these are very fast response time ESS required for that purpose to suppress these fluctuations. Oscillation damping, it's around the same. Then oscillations also because of load changes, because of maybe output power changes, maybe the output power available is changing, or the load is changing, or both are changing. So in all these situations, you need to maybe inject some extra power into the system and to damp out these oscillations. So that's where also we are using ESS. Then these are the bridging power applications. Bridging power applications require these storage systems that can provide services in the range of minutes to an hour. That's the time requirement, or the response time requirements. Instead of seconds, it can be from minutes to hours. And the idea is to form a bridge between the limited renewable energy resource generation and the high variability or highly variable electricity load, right? So for that purpose, in case there is a gap, bridging the gap in a way, you can try and use ESS for some duration till the time either the generated power output of the resources is up, or else you do have some other facility that's turned on. As a reserve, you might be having it. Okay. Then transmission support also, ESS can help bring about an improvement in the overall performance and load carrying capacity of the transmission system by compensating the disturbances and irregularities because of let's say in terms of your subsequence resonance or voltage sag or swell and unstable voltages. So that is where also you can use ESS as a support, active and reactive both. Transmission congestion relief transmission congestion also could be a problem. Maybe because of the demand of transmission capacity, if at all exceeds the transmission line capability. So if that's the difference, and because of this penetration of RER in the power system, this congestion could be a reason. So you can use your energy storage systems there as well. And this condition, obviously, if at all it exists, can adversely impact your stability of the system. Okay. Black start capability. Black start is what? It's the ability of the generating units to regain its operating condition after shutdown condition without any assistance. If there's a collapse that has taken place, maybe blackout that has taken place, without any assistance from the grid, can you start? Can you restart your generating units? So for black start capability, also ESS can be an appropriate interface or a help, and to make the system start afresh after the collapse or after the shutdown. And for that, the storage facilities, the energy storage system has to be in fully charged state. Whenever there's a demand, it can take up that. Contingency reserve, power utilities, they do maintain certain contingency. You call it spinning reserve or non-spinning reserve at various levels, just to see that operation is secure and stable in the event of a certain outage or certain failure, certain generating system or units or transmission line or whatever. So for that purpose also, you could be using these energy storage systems. And the spinning reserve is for the first line response, and which is usually is equal to the capacity of the largest unit in the area. And then non-spinning requirements as a secondary line of defense. Okay, that is where you can use these kind of energy storage systems like pumped hydro, maybe compressed air, etc. You could be using it for uninterrupted power supply, UPS, that we use in our daily life, maybe in our homes also, in our institution organizations. So UPS is being used wherever there are some critical loads involved. You try and use energy storage for that. Electric service reliability. Similar to power quality applications, electric service reliability helps in keeping the sensitive loads energized when the electric grid is not operational. So there could be some applications wherein you can't afford the shutdowns or load shutdowns, etc. So try and use energy storage systems there also. Forecast has mitigation. Obviously nowadays we do have a very good weather forecast, but despite that all, in case, let's say, these renewable energy sources, and they're really very good, but they do have also the challenges in terms of ensuring that the power that you're getting is as per the weather forecast. And by any chance, if your weather forecast goes wrong, and even for that matter your load forecast also goes wrong, then these inaccuracies in the forecasting can lead to more problems rather than solutions. Okay, so to take care of that, forecast has mitigation. In case there's a deviation between the forecast and the actual weather, or actual load, then whatever is the difference, that can be taken care of by the energy storage systems to make the balance. Okay, so that is also one of the applications. Mitigating renewable energy sources integration issues. Integration issues could be, other than the ones that we have discussed, could also be like islanding. Is your renewable energy, there's some fault that is occurred, so goes into islanding. Equipment control, there could be some control issues also, protection issues also. So the practice of islanding, moreover, every time fault occurs, may lead to unnecessary blackouts, and as a consequence makes the DC power system unreliable. So every time there's a fault, you go into islanding and you're not able to supply it to the entire area. So that's not a fair thing. Try and use ESS in case you can, so as to ensure the continuity of supply. Energy management applications, that's the third domain of applications, and that's the last one that I'm going to discuss. The energy storage system technologies are being used in energy management applications by providing energy time shift on the time scale of hours to several days or even months. And time shift means transmission and distribution investment deferral. In case you need to augment your infrastructure, instead of doing that, maybe if you can use maybe some energy storage system that can take care of that requirement, it's wonderful. Instead of expanding the whole network or infrastructure, using an ESS can help you go in for that. Okay. Energy time shifting or arbitrage in electricity market nowadays, see at different times of use, the electricity prices are going to be different. At the peak time it will be really high, maybe at off peak time it can be cheaper. So price of electricity varies from time to time, and in case you can shift the usage, and in case you can have, let's say, an energy storage system, you try and purchase the electricity at the low price time and charge your energy storage system, and subsequently sell it on the peak time when you can earn money also. That's for pure economics, right? Alternatively, energy storage system can store excess energy from renewable energy sources, which can be used later when demanded, or otherwise curtailed and wasted. So energy time shift can help in that also. In case there is no energy storage, whatever is the energy being generated by the renewables, that will be anyway wasted. So try and use that in case you can using energy storage systems. Peak saving and valley filling, that's something to do with the load. This thing, principle of peak saving or valley filling is quite similar to energy arbitrage application only. Basic difference is that in this application, energy storage system are used to soften the peak and valley shape of the load curve, whereas in energy arbitrage there are economics targets to achieve. So in case there's a peak load, in case right, and can you try and flatten that a bit, right, and try and use ESS to help around that time. Load following as per the varying demands. You could be trying fitting your generation, but if generation cannot be fit into as quickly as is needed by the varying loads, you can try and use your energy storage system so as to quickly take care of that variation of the load, both up and down, increase or decrease in the load. Compared to the generation type, there may not be a generation which is so quickly responding to that variation, so try and use ESS there in that case. Demand charge management is also like that only, reducing the power drawn when if it's highly priced during peak time, and then can you reduce your demand by making use of your energy storage during the time. Simple that. Okay. Renewable energy resources capacity firming. This is also something similar. Capacity firming involves what? Providing sufficient support to the output of renewable energy resources by using energy storage facilities, so that the combined output of RER and the storage system is somewhat or too very constant and firm. It's somewhat or almost constant and firm. Just top of, so to say, topping off that RER output with the energy storage if required, so that we can say fine, instead of variability of output available from the renewable energy sources, the output in a way to you sounds as if it's just you're receiving the constant output from, let's say, wind or a solar. 10 megawatt, you're getting all the time 10 megawatt. If there's a variability, that is taken care of by energy storage systems. That's kind of capacity firming application. Challenges and future prospects of energy storage systems. There are quite a bit of challenges still there in that for all different applications. There's a whole lot of research going around, reducing the cost, increasing the duration, discharge durations, or energy densities, and things like that. So, for example, reduction in the cost of energy storage components is a challenge where there's research going around. These energy storage systems presently are a little too expensive, but maybe it is projected that in time to come, even this cost will come down with evolving technology, with evolving research. And can there be one important focus for energy storage that can assist its economic viability is what? To manage more than one value stream by providing wide range of services by a single ESS. Can you have an energy storage system that can take care of variability of applications? Instead of one ESS meant for one application, can there be an ESS that can cater to maybe 5 different applications with varying requirements, maybe varying requirements in terms of response time, in terms of energy density, in terms of power density. So there's a research going around this also. One ESS for multiple applications, things like that. And also towards improving the life cycle, round trip efficiency, energy density, capacity loss, etc. Safety and performance assessment also, that also needs to be taken care of when you're going to deploy these energy storage systems. So there could be some chance of accidents, and if at all there are some accidents, we need to look into what are the reasons for. So we should try and see that they're safe. We should try and see that these energy storage systems safe for the environment as well. If we dump off, after their uses, these energy storage systems, for example, batteries, that creates all sorts of environmental issues. So from that point of view, also we need to look into update of regulatory design and existing power system structure. The existing power system structure initially wasn't, designed to take care of the penetration of renewable energy source in the first place, and then after, also it was not designed to let the integration of energy storage systems in a huge way into the power network. So now both things are there. There are these renewable energy sources getting into. There are these private players. People are having these installations on the rooftops, solar PV, etc. People are having these energy storage systems. So integration of renewable energy, integration of energy storage systems, variability, that's little too much in terms of usage behavior, in terms of output of renewable energy. So a whole lot of these regulations need to be redesigned, reworked, regulatory norms, and also the power system structure also has to undergo a change to let this be a part of this renewable energy network. Impact of environment that we've already, I think, discussed. So and that we need to take care of. What is the effect of these energy storage systems onto the environment? For example, PHES, we talk of, that affects the aquatic ecosystem, then because that requires huge area for storage water, toxic material, in terms of batteries, chemical, etc. SMS, if we talk of, you need to seal, from the strong magnetic field, because the magnetic field there is really very strong. So that we also need to have a shielding so that doesn't affect the population around. So all sorts of issues. Industry acceptance is also going to be there until it's tested and until it's proven. The industry will not accept and it will not get commercialized. So any energy storage technology that gets developed tomorrow, for instance, should be tested, tried, and it should be meeting all norms in terms of environment, safety standards, and all, and energy requirements or power requirements, etc. Then only acceptance by the industry will be assured of. These are just the diagrams to show you around suitability of a particular ESS for a different application. For example, level of suitability is marked as 0, the least suitable, to 3, the most suitable. If you see for power quality applications, the first one shows it like, right? So for power quality application, if you talk of PHES, it's almost not suitable, 0 almost. Then CS is also, and FES is suitable, and this is in this circle, and SMEs is also suitable. Like for B, the figure B shows bridging power applications. So for bridging power applications, the suitability of BS, flow BS, etc., CS is very good. And for energy management applications, this SMES and SCS, they are almost not suitable, 0 almost. And then after like that, okay. This is just worldwide power capacity sales by application and by type of energy storage systems. PHES, batteries, hybrid energy systems, compressed air, flywheel, thermal. So these are the different applications wherein these energy storage systems are the most suitable. In fact, are suitable, right? So it's not that any energy storage system can be used anywhere and everywhere, not like that. There are certain characteristics, there are certain feature requirements and that go into deciding which one is to be used for what application. All right, so with that, thank you so much. I've been somehow able to rush through these slides for you to appreciate more. Maybe I'll share the slides and maybe you can go through that. And still, in case you have some quick questions.
Thank you, sir.
I'll be
Thank you
happy to
very much.
respond
So
to
if
you.
any participant have any query, they may please ask to sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you're audible. You're audible very much.
Yes.
So I'm there with you. Right.
So
Hope you could
any of
make
the
some-
participant, if you have any query, they can directly ask to sir, or even they can type the into the chat box also. You can
Dr.
check.
Sathar, this is
if
Rajiv Kukarija from
Yeah.
NIT Jalandhar.
Yeah, Rajiv, how are you?
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine. I mean, I must compliment you for a very nice lecture. I think you have taught a full semester course in 2 hours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rajiv. Since you are, so good friend of mine, so you'll definitely, have nice words for me. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah. It's really
good
nice.
Good to see you. Okay, right. Very good. And Dr. Ganesh, Rajiv is my batchmate. Actually, he's my BTech batchmate and at REC Kurukshetra that time.
Great, sir.
He's a faculty at NIT Jalandhar. Good to see you, Rajiv.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Thank you.
So actually, I am teaching this course on renewables.
Achha,
And I mean, this participation in this short-term course has been really nice to me because when you are teaching the courses, you always teach from the mechanical perspective, So I'm
right.
mechanical engineer, and so many things are related to electrical. So I always felt a gap actually. So
Yeah, that's true.
the gap has been removed, and it is so nice to hear you. You know, from technical point of view.
Good, yeah, good, so nice. Thank you so much. I'm so
Thank
happy,
you,
in fact,
thank you,
I'm so
thank
glad.
you. Greeting from NIT Jalandhar and from Dr. Sharvan Bahuja also.
Acha, yeah, he's there with you.
No, he's not with me, but I'm just
Okay.
conveying for yeah.
Yeah, sure. See, nowadays everything's going to be interdisciplinary. We can't be
Yeah.
working as self loops.
Mhm.
Mechanical is happy with mechanical, electrical with electrical. ऐसा नहीं रहने वाला. आने वाले time it's
Yeah.
all going to be mixing up.
Right,
So
right.
it's a good course, and Dr. Ganesh has put in good efforts to connect good speakers into
Yeah, I
that.
must compliment him. He has actually utilized his contacts at IIT Delhi, and
Yes, fairly
almost all the
nicely.
experts he's known to them, and
Yes.
he's making a very good use of them. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank
Good.
you, Professor Sathans.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Ganesh. Then I'll take leave because मेरी एक और meeting है. I'll have to.
Yes,
If
sir.
it's okay.
So I formally once again thanks to Professor Satan sir to be here with us for a wonderful session on energy storage systems. So thank you very much, sir. And probably in future we will be here in some more meetings. So thank you
My
very
pleasure.
much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Good.
Thank you,
Yes.
everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you, participants also. Please be here. I have plotted the attendance link in the chat box. So you can record your attendance in by clicking on that. And we will be having next session at around 12 o'clock noon. So there will be the presentation of Professor Lalwani. He is from some university of some Rajasthan Technical University, Kota. So he has done his PhD from IIT Roorkee, and he has done a great job in some research, great research in some renewable energy systems. So he will be presenting it at 12 o'clock. So till then, although this meeting will remain live, so please record your attendance, because as I already said, the attendance must be of this FD. So thank you all once again, and please be here, or you may leave and you may join at 12 o'clock. Thank you very much to you all.